They're supposed to protect us, to uphold the law, to serve justice. But what happens when the people enforcing our laws become the criminals themselves? 5 immigration and customs enforcement officers, 5 separate cases, 1 disturbing pattern. This is the story of Andrew Golobic, Samuel Saxon, Jonathan Ross, Guillermo Diaz Torres, and John Jacob Olivas, federal agents who used their power to prey on the vulnerable, to abuse, to silence, to destroy lives. You're watching Crime Trace. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the cases that shake our faith in justice. Now, let's get into it. Cincinnati, Ohio, 2012. Inside a nondescript ICE office in Blue Ash, deportation officer Andrew Golobic had power over people's lives. Real power. His job? Supervising immigrants in the alternative to detention program, people fleeing violence, fleeing exploitation, fleeing sexual assault. The irony is about to become sickening. For 14 years, Golobic used his position to do the unthinkable. He targeted women under his supervision. Women who were already traumatized, already vulnerable, already terrified. These women were required to report to him. They had no choice. Their entire future in America depended on his cooperation. He knew that, and he exploited it. According to federal prosecutors, Golobic supervised asylum seekers and immigrants with vulnerable backgrounds. He had discretion over their freedom, their movement, their lives. And he used that discretion to coerce sex. One victim was in her early 20s, a Mexican woman without documentation. When her phone app for tracking didn't work, Golobic told her to communicate on his personal cell phone. Red flag number 1. Then he told her he had her passport, but she'd have to come to his home to get it. Red flag number 2. When she arrived at his house, he wouldn't give her the passport, not until she did what he wanted. After that first assault, she tried to reject his advances, but Golobic made comments that convinced her he would retaliate against her undocumented family, against her friends. So she went back, and he raped her again. But she wasn't his only victim. Investigators discovered at least 6 women had sexual contact with Golobic. They believe there could be more victims who never came forward. In March 2024, a federal judge sentenced Andrew Golobic to 12 years in prison for sex trafficking and violating civil rights. 12 years for 14 years of abuse. But Golobic's case raises a haunting question. How did this happen under ICE's watch? For 14 years? That question is about to get even more disturbing. Same city, same ICE office, different monster. December 5, 2024. Police respond to yet another domestic violence call in Cincinnati. But this time, the suspect isn't just anyone. He's Samuel Saxon, Assistant Field Office Director for ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations. And this is the 23rd time in 18 months that police have been called to his home. 23 times. The details are horrifying. A neighbor captured video of the December incident. Saxon's partner, a non-citizen, in a chokehold, struggling to breathe. But this pattern of violence goes back years. In 2018, his partner suffered a broken nose. In April 2024, a broken pelvis. Prosecutors said she could have become permanently disabled or dead. Saxon met this woman when she was 18 years old. He was 40. She's been financially dependent on him for nearly 8 years. Trapped. The medical reports paint a picture of systematic torture, bruises covering her body, ligature marks around her neck from strangulation. Doctors said the injuries were life-threatening. In August 2024, when EMTs arrived for another call, they reported she looked emaciated, anorexic. An officer asked her why she hadn't left. Her response? "I'm trying, but it's hard." But the abuse wasn't just physical. Prosecutors presented videos and audio recordings of Saxon's verbal abuse. The language was vile, degrading, and threatening. "If I see you here in 3 days, you will be executed." And when Saxon's landlord tried to intervene, Saxon screamed through the ceiling, "Don't have your Central Americans come down here again." The racism, the violence, the threats, all from a federal immigration officer. In September 2022, Saxon's supervisor in San Diego became concerned he might be suicidal. He hadn't shown up for work, hadn't contacted anyone for 16 hours. Police did a welfare check. They found Saxon naked, sitting on a toilet, holding a knife to his own neck. And yet, he kept his job. He kept his badge. He kept his power. Saxon is now charged with assault, domestic violence, strangulation, and lying to federal investigators. He's being held without bond. But the question remains, how did ICE not know? 23 police calls, 2 hospitalizations, years of documented violence. How did he keep his badge? January 7, 2026. Minneapolis, Minnesota. A routine ICE operation is about to turn fatal. Renee Good, 37 years old, American citizen. She's sitting in her vehicle when ICE agent Jonathan Ross approaches. Minutes later, she's dead, shot by Ross. The details are still emerging. The investigation is ongoing, but what we know is this. An American citizen lost her life during an ICE enforcement action. The killing sparked outrage across the country. Protests, demands for accountability, questions about use of force protocols. Court documents reveal Ross was previously injured during an operation trying to apprehend someone in the country illegally, but nothing in his record suggested he was a danger. Until January 7th. Renee Good's family is left with questions, the Minneapolis community is left with grief, and once again the question arises, what oversight exists for these federal agents? October 26, 2025, Oak Brook, Illinois. 2 a.m., a Westmont police officer notices an SUV stopped at an intersection. The driver appears to be asleep at the wheel. The officer tries to wake him. The SUV suddenly jumps the curb and plows into a row of hedges. The driver? Guillermo Diaz Torres, 33 years old, ICE agent from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Body camera footage shows the truth. Slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, strong smell of alcohol. He failed every field sobriety test. Walking in a straight line? Failed. Balancing? Failed. Reciting the alphabet? Failed. He couldn't even remember which direction he'd been driving. Diaz Torres told officers he'd just finished an 18-hour shift at the ICE detention center in Broadview, but that was 90 minutes earlier. The facility is less than 10 miles away. Where had he been? He couldn't explain. Here's the irony that makes this case particularly galling. Diaz Torres was in Illinois as part of Operation Midway Blitz, a Trump administration immigration crackdown where drunk driving is cited as justification for detention and deportation of undocumented immigrants. He was literally there to arrest people for the exact crime he just committed. He refused a breathalyzer. He's now facing DUI charges. If convicted, he could face up to 1 year in jail. Meanwhile, how many people did he help detain for the same offense? Our final case takes us back to 2012, Riverside, California. John Jacob Olivas was a Homeland Security Investigations special agent. He'd been with ICE since 2007, but there's something ICE didn't know when they hired him. Or maybe they did know, and they didn't care. 2 years before joining ICE, Olivas' ex-wife filed court papers accusing him of assault. Public records, documented history of domestic violence. ICE gave him a gun anyway. In May 2008, despite a restraining order from his ex-wife, ICE issued him a firearm. In 2012, Olivas raped one woman twice. He attempted to rape another. Both were his girlfriends at the time. Both testified that he beat them, and both said Olivas made sure they understood one thing: he was above the law. One victim testified that Olivas told her police wouldn't respond to any report she made. Because he was above a cop, he was untouchable. He was invisible to police because of his federal position. He told another victim he could make her disappear or remove her children. Think about that level of terror, that level of control. In December 2022, a federal jury found Olivas guilty of 3 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law. In May 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison. The judge said Olivas had engaged in systematic torture of women, that his victims would live with this trauma for the rest of their lives. Life in prison. Finally, justice. But it took 11 years. 11 years from the first assault to sentencing. How many other victims were there in those 11 years? 5 ICE officers, 5 separate cases, but one undeniable pattern: Andrew Golobic. 12 years for sex trafficking vulnerable immigrants. Samuel Saxon, 23 domestic violence calls, still awaiting trial. Jonathan Ross, shot and killed an American citizen during an enforcement action. Guillermo Diaz Torres, arrested for drunk driving while working an operation targeting drunk drivers. John Jacob Olivas, life in prison for rape, assault, and using his badge to silence victims. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a system with inadequate oversight, insufficient vetting, and a culture that allows abuse to flourish. Immigration advocate Lynn Tremonte said it best. This is an agency that demonizes immigrants who have committed no crimes, yet it fails to police its own ranks. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. The victims in these cases deserve justice. They deserve answers. And they deserve a system that protects them, not one that weaponizes federal authority against them. Until real accountability exists, the badge means nothing. This has been Above the Law on Crime Trace. If this story opened your eyes, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to see this. Subscribe for more cases that demand justice. I'll see you in the next one.